So what if the end of one war could actually set off a chain reaction that brings down a 75-year-old alliance? It sounds like a movie plot, right? But today, we're diving into two massive global crises that are happening at the same time. A potential end to the conflict with Iran and a huge crack forming right down the middle of NATO. And that's really the big question we're trying to figure out here. How could these two things possibly be happening at once? I mean, a war ending over here and a massive alliance fracturing over there, they seem totally unrelated. But as we're going to see, the source material suggests they are way more connected than you'd think. Okay, let's get right into it. The main idea from our source is this. The White House is signaling two huge potential moves at the exact same time. First, dialing back U.S. involvement with Iran, and second, maybe, just maybe, pulling the United States completely out of NATO. So let's tackle the first part of this equation, this standoff with Iran. This is a situation that's constantly changing, and believe me, it has some major implications for everyone. Now, our source material tells us that the president has suggested this conflict could be ending soon. But here's the thing. He's been super careful not to give any kind of firm timeline, which leaves everything, well, pretty uncertain. There's also been talk about doing spot hits if necessary, a policy our source says would be a complete non-starter for Iran. And this is where it gets really fascinating. You have this total contradiction in messaging. The U.S. administration came out and said Iran asked for a ceasefire. Then, almost immediately, Iran publicly said, no, we didn't. It just goes to show you there's an intense information war going on right behind the scenes. Now, this right here is the biggest bargaining chip on the table. The Strait of Hormuz. It's like a superhighway for a huge chunk of the world's oil. And according to reports, the U.S. won't even entertain the idea of a ceasefire unless Iran reopens this shipping lane. It's that important. And the economic fallout? Yeah, it's already here. The International Energy Agency is sounding the alarm about major impacts on oil supplies. But it goes beyond the gas pump. Our sources are highlighting breakdowns in supply chains for all kinds of things, even fertilizer. It's a pretty stark reminder of how a conflict in one region can send shockwaves through the entire global economy. All right, so let's put a pin in the Iran situation for just a second, because while all of that is going on, a totally different crisis is brewing. This one's happening across the Atlantic, and it's all about NATO. From what we're reading, the U.S. president is not holding back. He's been openly calling out some of NATO's biggest members, like France, Poland, and the UK, and basically saying they're not doing their fair share. And this quote just perfectly captures that feeling. The relationship has been called a one-way street. The argument is that the United States is putting way more into the alliance than it's getting out of it. And that is the public reason for why pulling out is even being discussed. And to really get why this is such a massive deal, you have to remember NATO's whole reason for being: collective defense. The idea is simple. An attack on one is an attack on all. If the U.S. leaves, that fundamental guarantee, well, it pretty much evaporates. So, could a president just decide to leave? It's actually not that simple. The source points to a law that was passed in 2024, which says you need a huge majority in the Senate or a whole new act of Congress. But, and this is a big but, it also mentions that some think a president might try to do it with executive authority anyway, which would set up an absolutely epic political and legal battle. So, you've got this powder keg in the Middle East on one hand, and a historic alliance on the brink on the other. Okay, now for the fun part. Let's connect the dots and see how these two stories are really just one big story. And here it is, the central question of this whole explainer. Why is all this happening right now, at the same time? Is it really just a coincidence? Well, the source we're looking at argues pretty strongly that no, this is no accident. The idea is that these two things happening together are a signal of a massive, deliberate shift in American foreign policy, a move away from the alliances and commitments that have defined the last several decades. So that brings us to the final and, let's be honest, the most important question. What on earth happens next? Let's take a look at the potential fallout from this huge policy shift, according to the source material. Let's not sugarcoat it. The most dramatic possibility is laid out pretty clearly. If the U.S. leaves, without its leadership and military muscle, the entire NATO alliance could just collapse. That would completely rewrite the security playbook for Europe and really for the whole world. And you can bet world leaders are nervous. Poland's defense minister said it plainly. There is no NATO without the U.S. And what's making everyone even more anxious are the mixed signals from inside the U.S. government. For instance, the defense secretary reportedly wouldn't give a straight answer about whether the U.S. would still defend an ally if they were attacked. That kind of uncertainty creates a lot of fear. And that leaves us right here with the ultimate question. Is this whole thing just a short-term power play, a tactic to put pressure on Iran and on NATO allies? Or are we actually watching the tectonic plates of global alliances shift for good? Our source leaves us with this one powerful idea to chew on. If these trends keep going, the world could be on the verge of a totally new geopolitical era. It seems the only thing we can be certain about right now is more uncertainty.